into First Take. Appreciate you starting your week with us alongside Skip Bayless. I'm Molly Karam. Stephen A. joins us from New York City. Gentlemen, I hope you both had a wonderful weekend. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good.
Let's get to it.
We have a lot to get into. Coming up, Grammy Award-winning rapper and friend of the program, Lil Wayne, will join the desk. Looking forward to him debating the guys, getting into some hot topics. But first, we kick things off in Green Bay, where Packers wide receiver Jordy Nelson left Sunday's game against the Steelers with what the team fears is a torn ACL. Nelson is having an MRI that will determine the extent of the injury. Coach Mike McCarthy said he's waiting for the test results once they get back to Green Bay. Since 2011, Aaron Rodgers has been targeted Nelson more than any other Packers receiver, and the two have combined for 39 touchdowns, the third most of any quarterback-wide receiver duo over that span. Here's Rodgers.
It's difficult to lose a guy like that in a meaningless game.
Well, we just heard Aaron there, Stephen A. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a blow is Nelson's injury for the Packers?
Well, it's a devastating blow. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, it's about a 9, to be quite honest with you. I mean, this is a guy that caught about 98 receptions for 1,519 yards last year. We showed how many times he's been targeted by Aaron Rodgers. We know that Randall Cobb is there along with others, but at the end of the day, Jordy Nelson has been his #1 offensive option as a quarterback. So when you look at Aaron Rodgers, the greatness that he displays, the bad man that he is, the things that he's capable of, we all know this to be true. But there's no way to get around it. If you're a quarterback and you are devastated by losing your #1 weapon, that could be an incredibly debilitating thing for the Green Bay Packers. He's #1 for a reason. He's Aaron Rodgers' #1 target for a reason. Even though Randall Cobb can admirably fill in to some degree in terms of playing that role, transitioning to #1, it's not going to be the same when he doesn't have Jordy Nelson on the other side as a wide out to feed off of. So I think this is a devastating blow for the Green Bay Packers. I don't think it's enough to limit them from getting to the playoffs, but I do think it's enough to get in the way of their Super Bowl aspirations.
Wow. I am shocked you went to 9. I was trying to predict in my head where you might go. I thought you might go 1 because of that bad man that is Aaron Rodgers. I thought maybe you'd just say, hey, it's Aaron Rodgers. He'll make anybody a star. He can make do with Davante Adams, whoever else it is at #1.
But I never say that about anybody in football, because the bottom line is that you can only throw it. An individual has to get open. If they can't get open, it doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not going to back off what I wrote down on my paper here. I'm going to go to an 8 because I do have two counts of respect for Aaron Rodgers. I do think he'll be pretty great, but maybe not that great without this guy. And my bottom line to this discussion is the Green Bay Packers with Jordy Nelson should have been the favorites to win the NFC, even though I still love my Dallas Cowboys chances. But I would give you they should be the on-paper favorites with Jordy. Without him, they're still going to make the playoffs. But they cannot win the NFC without Jordy Nelson. That's just me. That's my bottom line to this discussion, because Jordy Nelson had a wavelength connection with this quarterback, a trust factor, a rapport that I'm not sure I see anywhere else in the league. I sometimes see it with Romo and Jason Witten, but obviously Jason Witten isn't the game breaker that Jordy Nelson is, because Stephen A., last year, Jordy Nelson was tied for the lead in the NFL with catches over 40-plus yards. He had 7. Those are game-breaking catches, and I can remember a bunch of them that cost me in games I was rooting against Jordy Nelson. You pointed out the 98 catches. That was a career high last year, and he was targeted the 4th most times in the NFL by his quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. So clearly, the trust factor, it's just going to be gone, because, to me, I like Davante Adams. I like his talent. I could even argue he has #1 receiver talent. I'm not sure about the intangibles. I'm not sure about him catching the pass at the moment. He seems to drop too many balls to me. And yet, last year in the shadows, as the #3, the third wheel receiver, I thought Davante Adams was really good because he could thrive in the shadows. Well, if he's now the #1 receiver, the #1 wideout, because to me, Randall Cobb is a 5'10" slot receiver. That's where he's going to do his most damage. So can Davante Adams carry this team as the #1 receiver? How will he respond to double teams, to pressure, to expectations that he's never felt before as a second-round draft pick just a year ago? Obviously, he was a rookie last year. I don't know, but I don't love it. And I look down the line, that Ty Montgomery they just rave about, and there's one other X factor here, Stephen A., that I'll throw at you. I don't know if you remember Jared Abbrederis when he was at Wisconsin, but I loved him. Yeah, I just loved him. He's a guy who knows how to play. Aaron Rodgers has raved about him. Mike McCarthy has raved about him. Unfortunately, he tore up his knee early last camp, so he missed all last year. Then he got a concussion, and he's had a history of concussion issues back to his days at Wisconsin, the first camp practice this year, and he's still fighting with that. So I don't know, but because he ran a 4.5 40 at the combine and is a bigger receiver, I think he could not be Jordy Nelson, but help fill that void if he could ever get healthy. But still, is it enough filling of the void to get them over the top in the NFC? I don't think so. I think this is a huge damaging blow to their ultimate goal of getting back to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, we agree. No question. I can't argue with anything that you said.
Okay, and let me throw this at you. This is a pet peeve of mine, and I used to be the other way around, but I used to wonder how college football can get away with having 0 preseason games. They just throw their players out there cold into game #1, and as we know, some teams, speaking of Wisconsin, is going to play Alabama in the opening game. They have no preseason work at all against anyone other than themselves. I've advocated before maybe college deserves to have one scrimmage against somebody nearby them, maybe even a rival. Just go scrimmage for a day. But in this case, 4 preseason games. Once upon a time it was 6. But I'm just getting sick and tired as a huge NFL fan of seeing this kind of thing happen in the second preseason game. It just makes me sick because it's freakish.
I totally
know,
agree.
But it's just too much. It's too many.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing that I would throw out. Skip, when these teams are scrimmaging one another, usually they put on shoulder pads and a helmet, but they hit high and they don't hit low.
Yep.
In scrimmages, right? How come that can't be?
And the quarterback's off limits, obviously. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
How come that can't be the case in preseason?
I can tell you why.
What's wrong with that?
Because you can't sell that to the public. And if you're making your constituency, your season ticket holders, buy 2 home preseason games, think of the added revenue you're getting. And I'm saying, look at the revenue you're losing when you lose a Jordy Nelson or Marquise Pouncey is not as big a deal for Pittsburgh. It's a big deal internally because he's a center, but he's not a big star, obviously, not a ticket seller.
Well, I'm not sure that the phrase losing revenue is applicable, because what we've been convinced of is that the NFL is king, and so much so, everyone's a distant second, that it's one of those situations when you look at the NFL, no matter what, it's going to sell. So I don't think the absence of Jordy Nelson or the absence of Pouncey or the absence of somebody else is going to make you lose money, because they have shown that when it comes to the NFL, I mean, preseason games are outrating, some playoff games in other sports, for crying out loud.
Sure.
So when you look at it from that perspective, I'm not sure if it's applicable that, the notion that they're going to lose revenue. They're going to get their revenue no matter what. But what I would say is, because they're going to get their revenue no matter what, I think some of these other things being instituted are plausible. When you watch these scrimmages, crowds are packed to come and watch the scrimmages. Because it's the NFL.
It's not like 80,000 are out there, but
I know.
But again,
I know.
You're right. They draw.
Yeah. So, and then not only that, the NFL, dare I say, is going to have to stop being a big gluttonous. You make a lot of money. The TV revenue is unquestionable. When you combine that with the fact that, again, you're only costing yourself some fans walking through the turnstiles, because folks are still going to watch these games on television.
Sure.
Either do away with a couple of preseason games, or just make the decision. And by the way, make the decision that you can't hit low. Now, I know that's counterproductive to what the NFL has been advocating, because their whole thing is to hit you as low as possible so they can stay away from the headshots, so they don't have to concern themselves with the concussion issue. However, my point is that you put on helmet and shoulder pads, and you know what? You force guys to hit from the chin and lower, you know, and above the waist. That's going to obviously, through repetition, induce habits that could ultimately work to the advantage of the NFL, because if you're still enforcing avoiding headshots, but you're encouraging guys through the preseason to hit high from the waist on up to above the shoulders and the neck area, then come during the season, habits are going to take fold, and you may elect to do that more during the season than take out guys' knees too, because that's one of the things we lamented. So I think that you know, it's a dual effect that could end up working to the advantage of the NFL and the viewing public, because the chances of seeing the people that you really want to see play will elevate.
Could the NFL put the same product on the field in week 1 with one preseason game? Just one dress rehearsal? That's what we always call the third preseason game.
They can't. But the flip side to it, Skip, is that the sacrifices early will elevate the level of urgency as the season progresses, because you may have cost yourself a game or two, you know, before you catch your rhythm during the regular season. So because of that, it elevates the importance of the season as the season wanes, which is obviously what happens anyway. So to me, it just raises the importance even more so, which makes it even more compelling.
Well, the bottom line to this discussion...
And not only that...
Yeah, go ahead.
And not only that, Skip, keep in mind that you might catch one of the more experienced and accomplished teams sleeping because they didn't have the preseason to fall back on. So the lesser teams might have an opportunity to steal a victory here or there earlier on, which could potentially assist them later, which means more team will be in the mix for a playoff spot, and that would make things interesting in November and December.
Well, the one play yesterday that could have caused real doom and gloom, not just in Green Bay, but around the NFL, Aaron Rodgers stayed in after Jordy went out. And there was a play in the end zone, I don't know if you saw it, Stephen A., that wound up being a safety in which
I saw it.
Aaron Rodgers held the ball way too long. I don't know what he was trying to pull off. And he got sandwiched between James Harrison and 4 or 5 other on-rushers. And I thought he was going to be hurt. It just looked horrible to me. So that's the kind of play I don't want to see in preseason game number 2. It's just not worth it to the overall product that is the National Football League.
Got it.
I'd assume Devontae Adams would be elevated to one of those top 2 receiving spots there with Randall Cobb, but this just in, ESPN is reporting that Green Bay is reaching out to Reggie Wayne. So we'll keep you posted on what happens there.
I don't think he'd be the number 1, but...
Someone else there with Ty Montgomery and some of those other guys.
He just took a physical in New England, so maybe he's going to go to the highest bidder now.
We'll see. We do know they like those 3 receiver sets as well. So, at the 2014 NFC Rookie Symposium, guest speaker Chris Carter of ESPN talked to players about having a fall guy in your crew. The video was brought to light after a recent ESPN The Magazine interview with former 49er Chris Borland. An ESPN spokesperson said, "We completely disagree with